First, we'll start with mobile gaming. Almost everyone has played a mobile game at least once in their life. They're quick, bite fun on the go. Throughout the years, we've seen many come and go. We've started a long time ago with Angry Birds, and then Jetpack Joyride, Candy Crush, Bejeweled, Temple Run, Subway Surfer, Clash of Clans, and most recently Among Us. A lot of people feel a type of nostalgia for these games, before the soulless cash grabs that now plague the App Store. The games that look like they were made in 10 minutes, the ones in those weird ad boxes on the side of websites. Well, it turns out that those games don't actually exist, but rather they survey what kind of games people might be interested in. Already off to a not so good start. Just so we can get this across right now, no, not all mobile games are like this, uh, but the games we'll be talking about are certainly not the minority either. In fact, the practices are so widely known, they're talked about in public conferences, and nobody bats an eye. With all that being said, let's get into how they're made. The teams behind AAA games and mobile games are fundamentally different. While AAA studios focus a large portion of the team on art direction, writing, balance, a mobile game studio deals more with user acquisition. Not to mention that companies employ data scientists, psychologists, and contractors. They spend time analyzing player behavior and find ways to extort players. Taking a quote straight out of the conference I mentioned earlier, make sure your games aren't too skill based. I made that mistake myself. You don't get people to pay you because there's no reason to. Therefore, the two most common types of games are going to be paying and grinding. Paying is pretty obvious what that means. Grinding is when you have to complete the same task over and over again for minimal rewards. Games will usually exploit players because, well, quite frankly, grinding is boring. They'll have either time boosts or ways to make the grinding more efficient, faster, better rewards. Alright, now let's say you don't spend any money on any mobile game. You think that you are not supporting the business practices that they employ. Well, actually, you kinda still are. It does depend on the game, but a lot of games employ player versus player interactions where you have to fight other players, and that means you'll eventually come across players who have spent money. And if you haven't spent any money, you're likely going to be at a disadvantage. And every time you lose, you might think, well, it's because I didn't spend any money and this person did, which actually gets you closer and closer to spending money, so you don't ever have to go through that experience again. In turn, feeding the corporate more money, and you push more people to the point of paying money. For now, let's leave the mobile games alone. Don't worry, we'll come back to them. This leads me to the next part of my studies, console and PC gaming. When I say that the money generated by the mobile gaming market is more than PC and console gaming combined, it's hard to think that these games could be any worse, but I assure you that they are just as nasty. Ever since the uptake in mobile game revenue, companies have been taking a page out of their books. The system most online games have pioneered is loot boxes. The dreaded plague that infected games for many, many years and still does. It all started back in 2009. EA, publisher of the famed sports games.
Fuck you too!
It was actually FIFA that started the trend. It was a perfect storm. You take the world's most popular sport with some of the most recognizable athletes in the world and let players create their own all-star team. The only catch is it just happens to be random and it costs money. It was quite the simple strategy. The more money you spent, the more likely you were to get better players. It sounds annoying and monotonous, and it is, but it worked. EA decided that it worked so well that they moved it to other sports titles. Both NBA 2K and Madden share the same system. You can even see the success for yourself. In 2008, EA was a company valued from $5 billion in 2008 and went all the way to $44 billion in 2018. In fact, in 2019 alone, FIFA was a total of 30% of all the company's revenue. Now, every other company saw this as a prime opportunity to make easy money. The problem was how to do it. And of course, the answer to that was a loot box. Star Wars Battlefront, Halo, Modern Warfare, Black Ops 2, Black Ops World War 2, Fortnite, Destiny 2, Mass Effect 3, Forza, Gears of War, Need for Speed, Overwatch, Division 1, Division 2, PUBG, all employed the loot box systems. The rule of pay to compete is written all over these. In fact, many of these games had people collecting items that actively helped them and gave them advantage in game, meaning that if you didn't spend money, you would likely be on the short end of the stick. Another facet of gaming that is especially guilty of taking people's monies: card games. Card games work on a rotating set basis. This means that around every 3 months, the game will come out with new cards. And these, let's just say these cards are vastly more powerful than any of the cards played beforehand. This means anybody who's not having these cards is an active disadvantage. And the game developers are a little smart about it. They aren't just going to introduce them and have you spend money for all the cards. Nobody's going to want to do that. So instead, they give you the chance to obtain a lot of the more common cards, give you a taste of that new power level. The rare cards, those are locked behind a paywall, but they're also locked behind luck. And how are they going to get you to spend money? Well, of course, when you play against other opponents that have these strong cards, you're going to feel like you're at a massive disadvantage. And eventually that'll encourage you to spend money. Now, most card games are going to implement a system where you get some of the rare cards, but not necessarily the ones that you need. And so they allow you to refund the cards at a more discounted price than what they're actually worth. And they allow you to build up to one card that you actually want. This way, even if you get 5 rare cards, none of them may be the one that you want. And so you just spent 5 rare cards, you returned them, and now you have one of the rare card that you want. Not exactly the best deal in the world. This also happens in fighting games. What happens when you introduce the new best character in a game, but they cost $6? Now that doesn't sound that bad. It's only $6. But what happens when they come out with another character after that? And then another, and then another. Quickly the $6 start to add up, plus that's $6 without tax. In the end, most fighting games will introduce 20 plus new characters. That's an additional $120 before tax on top of the $6 that you already paid for the game. And if you don't have these characters, well, now you're at a real disadvantage, because it doesn't matter how good you can be if you ever fight somebody who is as skillful as you, but they have a better character. Well, you already know what happens. After hearing about all these practices, you might be wondering, well, why isn't anybody doing anything about it? And that was true for a long time, until pretty recently. The government has actually started taking action against a lot of loot box systems. Companies have started taking them out of their games, and they are slowly disappearing. Even if they are going away slowly, no company wants to deal with the legal troubles that EA has been put through. Even somebody like Chris Lee, a member of the Hawaii State Senate, publicly blasted EA for their less than charitable practices. The Federal Trade Commission hosted a workshop to discuss consumer awareness surrounding loot boxes. Legislations around the world have been taking action against certain features in countries to prevent companies from selling loot boxes to minors. The Dutch court recently fined EA for $10 million.
This game is a Star Wars themed online casino.
Is this good for the player?
Designed to lure kids into spending money. It's a trap.
It's a trap.
And it feels like Valve itself has specifically designed this game to operate almost exactly like a slot machine.
Is this good for the player?
And the game award goes to, oh man, I have to pay a microtransaction to unlock. That's so...
These kind of mechanics, and FIFA, of course, is our big one. Our FIFA Ultimate Team and our packs is actually quite ethical and quite fun, enjoyable to people.
However, there is only one threat left to the balance, something that looms over all gamers' heads: gacha. The gacha game is the perfected form of all the practices previously mentioned, all tight in one small devious package. When talking about gacha games, it's important to know the origin of the name. Gachapon machines originated in Japan in the 1960s. They were vendors that you could slot coins into, and in return, you'd receive a small capsule with a random toy inside. A gacha game is simply the digital version of that. Gambling incarnate. Let's start off this segment with video.
お話の第1部が終了した時点でみんな本当に感動して泣いたし、その人となりとかをこうクローズアップされてて、その人物一人一人をこう好きになれるようなストーリーになってますね。好きなもん欲しいじゃないですか。大悟です。 FGO プレイヤーです。だいたい起きてる時は触ってるみたいな感じ。ご飯食べてる時もお風呂と寝てる時以外はだいたい、あと車運転してる時以外は触ってると思うんですけどね。多分700万ぐらいはそれ以上してると思いますけど、もうそれ以上はもうあんまり考えないようにしてますね。貯めてたお金があったので、それをあとはちょっと運用して株とか先物とかそっち系ですね。ただ単にその強くするにはっていうのもあるしですね、1人出すのに多分5万ぐらいかかってて、それをオーグレベル5っていう風にしたかったので、それでかける5なんで25万以上ですね。
Come on, Lancer, 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 Saber! Oh! I'm actually okay with this.
And this is the best actual roll I've ever had. 85 quid left in the bank, and I'm gonna spend 60 quid. I've already spent 120 quid. That's a lot for me, who doesn't have a stable job because I'm in uni. Give me this shit. Give me this shit. Give me this shit, boy!
映画の感動だったら1800円だし、僕のその FGO での感動がね700万か。ゲームしてない時はもう本当に車の運転してたり買い物したりとか、あとは言われたら皿洗いとか、掃除とかはやりますね。どこまでかけたかは知ってないと思います。今楽しいんで、それでいいかなとは思ってますけど。
Now, you might think that this man is extraordinarily sad, and I would be inclined to agree with you. But the problem is, he's not the exception. Even though he spent an egregious amount of money on this game, he's not alone. Some of the comments on the video are even more telling of the actual experience. People saying that they would never in their right mind spend money on the game, and then as soon as they started playing it, maybe a year or two in, they're already sunk in. They are the exact same way. Maybe not to the same degree, but they are still deep within the game's grasp. The gameplay in the said games varies greatly, from puzzle solving to tower defense to basically no gameplay at all. But what ties all the games together under one genre is the pull. In most iterations, the games will have you roll for characters that can be used in-game. Other games also present you the option of summoning items that can make your character stronger. This is where we come back to mobile gaming. It turns out that most gacha games are mobile games. So with that basic idea out of the way, let's discuss the practices. First, login bonuses. This incentivizes players to log in every day. A small reward, nothing too big, maybe a bigger reward at the end of the week, or just a bigger reward in general at the end of a time interval. The whole goal is to get people to be in the habit of playing the game. This idea of the daily login builds in the sunk cost fallacy, which we will return to. It's the same with the battle pass, a slow reward system that is set up as a linear line. Players can see the rewards that they will gain over time. Players often can pay to get better rewards, but never usually faster. It'll take weeks, maybe even months at a time to complete one battle pass. These systems build up a sunk cost fallacy. A sunk cost fallacy is essentially when people put time and money into something. They feel obligated to continue. This is what casinos thrive off of. People go in and they spend small amounts of money, but eventually as they lose more and more money, they feel like they can't step away until they at least make their money back, if not win. Obviously, the games are set up in a way where the house always wins. This is true of gacha games as well. The other thing about gacha games is that there is no monetary gain. At least on a casino you can say, well, I won some money. Even on some days when you lose money, there's always a chance that you'll get some back. In the gacha game, you're spending money, and for what? A PNG. Something that's on a server that will eventually one day be shut down. If you lose your account, it's gone forever and there's no way of getting it back. That money is essentially gone. Games also offer players packs, usually deals, at opportune times. Times when players are either first starting the game and they've completed the tutorial, they're likely to spend. Even after they lose several times on end, they're likely to spend. And these developers, they have algorithms that perfectly time when these packages are sent out and how much of a deal it actually is. The more and more the player holds off on actually spending money, the deal will be worth it. Get down! Another thing they get you with, the social element of the game. Now, this is not necessarily the actual company that does it, but rather the people around it. Even if they don't know that they're doing it, it still happens. Let's say somebody posts a video of them getting extremely lucky in a gacha game. They've pulled 2 extremely rare units back to back. Now somebody sees this video and they think that they can be that person too. The odds are so low, less than 0.5%. But yet people still go for it because they've seen it. They know it can happen. It doesn't matter if the luck is associated with money or not. The fact that it can happen is enough. Even if the person who got extremely lucky spent no money, they are still encouraging people to seek after that same high. And so they spend money. Just had a chance to get that. And when they do eventually, because it will happen, they'll post that video. And then more people will see it. And more will start believing this is a more common thing than it actually is. And people will search for it.